And we are live. G'day, guys. As always, give me the first couple of minutes to set everything up. I'll share this straight into the Tripod Facebook group right now. In the meantime, if you've got any thoughts on round 5, your favourite moment of the round, or just something that stuck out to you, comment that, and I'll try and be as interactive as I can tonight and sharing your comments on the screen. Also, please let me know if you can definitely hear me and see me. Bloody Eels is right, mate. Well, I can see James Corey commenting, and I know he's a Dragons fan. So at least some people are happy. Yeah, we'll get to the Eels, guys. Yeah, quite a few things to be sad about in that game, and quite surprising. Obviously, a bloody crazy Sunday with 2 double-digit upsets, but we'll actually start with Thursday and then we'll finish on a sour note, hey? Did anyone get a multi up this weekend? A few of the sure things went down. Jeff's got his grand final tickets for the Cowboys. That's good to know, David. Okay, welcome to the Tripod. We break down the NRL every week, every game from a punting perspective, and this is the Round 5 live recap. I'm Jacob Wynn. I'm going to take us through a crazy round of footy where we had mixed results again. 3 and 2 for the best bet. So from a best bet front, that's everything I can hope to achieve for you guys. That is 5 straight weeks going 60% or better each and every week with the best bet tips. But again, we just haven't had that perfect round. There's always been at least one game that let us down. And with that being the case, we didn't win either of the multis this week again. So down 2 units on multis and lost the mixed matchup. And I'm so salty about this. The mixed matchup was the Eels to outscore the Warriors. And when the Warriors only put up 12 with a team total over under of 24.5, I mean, I checked odds today, literally $1.05 for the Eels to score more than 12 points. They scored exactly 12. I said that we'll get to that game, but we need the team to outscore to win the mixed matchup. But what is crazy is it's round 5. We've just won in the last 2 weeks by 28 and 19 points, and we've already had 2 losses by 1 point. And we've already had twice in 5 rounds where it's been a tie and we lose. And someone did ask, why does a tie have to be a loss? And when I was actually setting up the mixed matchup market at the start of the season, I was thinking, should we make it a push? Should we make it a half win? You know, it's going to suck to have a tie and lose, but it's all built into the odds. You guys know we're getting nice, juicy odds. It's still on me to try and find us a good matchup, and I think in the long run of the season, we're going to make money from it. I really do think we've been quite unfortunate with some very close losses, and then when we've won by a big margin. Unfortunately, that's just the variance of it. And this week, I was half right because it was a good spot to go against the Warriors. They did not score many points, but I got it wrong with the Eels. And again, I will get to that one because I know it hurt us in several ways. But let's begin on Thursday after we just confirmed the round recap. 14 and 8, 64% on best bets overall for the season, and you're still up $460. As an example, if you had 100 on every best bet and every mixed matchup, even though the mixed matchup and the best bet both lost today. So let's talk, and you guys let me know what you think as well. So let's talk about game by game and share any of the things that stuck out to you guys with the games. The opening match of the round was the Rabbitohs 35 beating the Broncos 6. The line on this game was over 20. I didn't have a best bet on the game. I knew after Brisbane failed us miserably the week before in Melbourne, I couldn't trust them taking the points. But Brisbane just getting a couple troops back, and a guy like Payne Haas, he actually did have a big game for them. It just bolsters them enough. I was just worried about, Brisbane, maybe that camp mentality being pushed out of Queensland for a mini camp in New South Wales. Would they show up? there was a period in this game where the Rabbitohs got up, I think, 10-0 early, and then the Broncos struck back, and it was 10-6 until very late in the half. And I was thinking, man, Brisbane have showed up for this one. And then the dam wall kind of broke. Not only did the Rabbitohs break away and get a try that put them back up by 10, as you guys probably know, there was the first ever 2-point field goal by Adam Reynolds on the halftime siren. And that was very significant to some because the halftime line was 10.5, and it was going to be Rabbitohs going in 16-6. Instead, it was 18-6. So that was either a winner for anyone who laid the chalk with the Rabbitohs first half or had it in the same gamer, or brutal way to lose your tip if you were brave enough to take the Broncos first half. Other takeaways from this game: what a luxury it is for the Rabbitohs to sign a guy like Benji Marshall, because it's a perfect situation for them to bring him in where he doesn't threaten the incumbent halves. They know it's still their job, but he adds he's almost like an extra coach at training, and then he can slot in when they get a suspension, when they get an injury, or when rep season comes up. So I thought he did well. Obviously, he scored the first try. And another guy who's just an absolute beast, Latrell Mitchell. I mean, there was question marks a year ago, but whether he can play fullback. He's just so powerful and yet also so dynamic. So I just thought this 29-point Rabbitohs win, where after the Broncos scored first half, they held him out the rest of the way, was all just about the Rabbitohs just being far too good. Of all the matches this season with a line over 20 points, the favourite has covered that line, interestingly, and none of the underdogs really went too close. We'll move to Friday, and the early game was the Warriors playing the Seagulls in Gosford, and the Seagulls getting a last-second 13-12 victory. So this was good for the best bets because I did have two best bets on this one. I never really in doubt that I would be taking Manly in this match. They've just shown me glimpses in a few of the games this season, but I just love to bet on a team that I believe is going to come into a game desperate, and I don't think Manly wins this game without that desperation. Now, Manly got the opening try, kind of a lucky try or a crazy try, kicking first play off a scrum from inside their own half, and Jason Saab, more like Ferrari, flies through and gets the opening score. But then the Warriors struck back, and the Warriors got out in front 12-6, second half. It was a grinder of a game, but it was very tight. Dylan Walker, torn hammy, getting tackled by RTS. Basically, I feel like if Manly didn't have that desperation, they were defending their own line. Warriors could have scored again. The Warriors were in control of the game, I feel, at 12-6. And sorry, guys, just trying to keep the comments coming through as well. And I'm just saying this because even though I had Manly plus 7.5 and Warriors under 24.5, and they both look like super comfortable best bet winners, the truth is with 15 to go, 20 to go, if the Warriors score again and get up 18-6, they probably carry on with it. So I'm not sitting here saying Manly looked like clearly deserved to win. It truly was a coin flip. Both teams had a couple field goal shots at the end. DCE's the one who ices it. I felt like, what the hell's going on here? I've never seen Roger Tuivasa-Sheck run the ball more than he did in that game. 17 runs first half, 30 in total. I think he wanted to be more involved after the loss to the Roosters by 20 points last week. And this is not the kind of game where I wanted Roger to touch the ball 30 times when I bet Warriors under. But in the end, we do get both those wins. There was a few 50-50 challenge calls late in the game, and it seemed like they all went Manly's way. And as I say, they were gritty enough to deserve to win without, me trying to say they were clearly the right side. Move to the later game Friday night, which is probably the game many others were expecting would be the closer and better game on Friday night, and that was Panthers beating the Raiders 30-10. Now, a lot of people were tempted to take the points with the Raiders in this one. When I was looking for best bets, the line was 6.5, maybe 7.5, and I was looking around saying, can I get a flat 6 on Panthers, or is anybody hanging a minus 5.5 out there? I just thought Penrith at home, I can only bet on this team. They're that much of a juggernaut. Now, does that mean that Penrith was the right side in this game because they won by 20? Not necessarily. The Raiders did score the first try, and also another try was awarded to put them up 10-0 with a kick from in front. But on closer inspection, Jared Croker fumbles a put down on a kick, and it goes from being, potentially 12-0 to the Raiders to Panthers going the other direction, 7-tackle set. They score soon after. Nickel Klostad had an early high shot, suffered a high shot, was ruled out for the rest of the game. So I think you couple like a 12-point swing like that and losing your fullback, and that goes a long way to kind of deciding the match. Ultimately, Penrith just steamrolled them though, and I just don't think, I just don't know when you want to get out in front of this Penrith team. I've spoken about in the preview that, they're missing Dylan Edwards, they're missing Coruscant, but they do have the depth to cover those guys. A lot of people saying how deep Penrith are. I think they're really deep in the back line, and even obviously got depth to cover the spine when you can bring in a guy like Matt Burton, and he can obviously play in the halves or play in the centers. Don't forget Brent Naden is still out of this team. He could potentially come back in as well. I don't know if they've got as much depth in the forward pack. You look a year ago, guys like Moses Leota were coming off the bench, where now, he's starting prop there. So they haven't really copped injuries in the forward pack. That's about the only chink I could possibly see in their armor. Otherwise, Penrith is just a scary proposition, and they just play with incredible energy, enthusiasm, and you just really have to pick your spot. I know we're going to get some really big lines, and Penrith plays Brisbane next week. And I looked at the line yesterday, and I think it was 24.5. But I dare say it's going to be – I wouldn't be surprised if that line gets closer to 30 by the time the game kicks off, just because of how ruthless Penrith have been looking. Let me know what you guys thought of that Panthers-Raiders game. I know, people feel a bit hard done by when a lot of cruel blows were struck to the Raiders early. But it's just, one thing you can't do is deny how good this Penrith side is. We'll move to Saturday. And we had a best bet. Oh, I've stuffed up there, guys. I've repeated the this is the beauty of live streaming. Okay, well, sorry, guys. I haven't got the graphic on screen, but let me pull up the scores just to make sure I get it right. I've somehow copy-pasted Friday in twice. Saturday, of course, the early game was the Titans 42 beating the Knights 16. And my best bet lost 1 minute into the match, and I tried to get a bit creative, and the best bet was no try in the first 7.5 minutes, and there was a try in the first minute. And so when I flicked the game on, I knew this type of bet, it's either going to look really smart or really stupid. There's no kind of in-between. So either is early try, there isn't. What I didn't need was Kalen Ponga coming back from injury and kicking the kickoff out on the full. So then I'm like, here we go. Because when you bet no try first 7.5 minutes, you're hoping that teams will at least exchange a couple sets. You may not even need to sweat too much goal line defense unless there's an early error or something. But sure enough, we were sweating goal line defense, and the bet didn't even last 7 tackles, let alone 7 minutes. Now, in terms of judging whether it was a good bet or not, it's obviously easy to say it was horrible. In retrospect, I judge it based on whether a lot of tries in the game. If there's a game with a lot of tries, especially a lot of tries in the first half, you would never want to bet no try first 8 minutes. And this match, I think, had about 6 tries in the first half and went way over first half. I was considering betting first half unders with the same sort of logic that teams are missing a few backline weapons, a bit of lack of continuity in the halves. So got that game wrong anyway. Guys, I will try, just because it's live, I will try and see if I can chuck the scores up on screen because it's bothering me. So see if you guys can send through your comments, and I'll try and navigate this all at the same time. This could be a bit of a disaster, but we'll just give it a crack, lads. What else did you guys make of the Knights-Titans game? To me, the other big thing is just this Titans team is very depleted. This Knights team is very depleted. Clemmer was able to play, but didn't seem to be as effective as he often is. How are we going to go here, guys? All right. At least I got it there. And when ultimately what it came down to for me, what became quite obvious in this Titans-Knights game was Titans are close to full strength. Ash Taylor was back in the team. Fogarty was able to go. And for the Knights, they're still missing several troops. They lost their starting 5'8" and starting halfback last week. Yeah, Ponga came back in, had some beautiful touches, but this team is a bit down on their luck and down on troops at the moment, and it was a tough afternoon for the Knights. But someone's commented it there that Fafita is a freak, and yeah, this game really was all about Fafita. So the Titans signed him for 1.3 million a season. And I was not against that. Like, I did say that's paying overs for him, but when you are trying to build something, you're not necessarily a glamour club that can sign players for unders. You're going to have to pay top dollar sometimes, but sometimes that's worth it because it changes the culture and it helps recruitment of other players, and it just raises the caliber of your side. And the thing about paying someone 1.3 million, they pretty much need to be the best forward in the competition to be deserving of that money. But the thing about Dave Fifita is he could be close to that. And when he turns out performances like he did in this one, and how many tries, he got a hat-trick in the end, didn't he? And God knows how many tackle breaks. Then he's worth every dollar when he has performances like that. It was absolutely insane, and he did it all different ways. If you didn't catch the game, it's one to check the highlights. His first try was a quick tap where they got a penalty, and everyone knew what he was going to do, and he tapped it and just steamrolled Connor Watson and scored. His third try, he actually outran or kind of stepped Kalen Ponga because he had bumped off Kalen Ponga for the second try. Ponga was slightly bracing for contact, and Fifita ran around him. That just shows how mobile he is. So while Titans kind of started to steamroll in this game, the Knights did make a little comeback. Titans had a man sent to the bin. And I thought, if you guys, anyone who did watch that game, if you thought that overruled try, was it Chris Randall? Where I thought that he did get the grounding there, and they looked at it and said that they saw no grounding, but with the body kind of wrapped around the ball, I thought that was a really harsh call to overturn that. And then the Titans went and scored very next play. But ultimately, Titans way too good in that one and winners by 26 points. Then an interesting game, the Doggies against the Storm. And the final score was Storm 52, Bulldogs 18. That's right. They not only broke the duck of no points for 244 straight minutes, they scored 18 against the defending premiers. So I was happy with that because we did have a best bet on the Bulldogs to score. They just had to score over half a point in the first half. And Luke Thompson crashed over 20 minutes in, and the halftime score, well, I think Storm blitzed them at the end of the half. The halftime score was like 30-6. Yeah, 30-6, I think. But that's the beauty of taking a team that's a historical underdog. They didn't need to do a lot for us to win our bet. And one thing I did say about the Dogs, well, a couple of things. It was very much on their mind in terms of their preparation and their focus, that how they've been ridiculed for how bad their attack was. So I felt that they would come into this game thinking, realistically, we're virtually no chance of beating the Storm, but let's not get embarrassed and score 0. And let's actually, have a crack in attack. Let's not play nervous. Let's not be conservative because that's not going to get us anywhere. So I thought they actually were taking the line on, offloading the ball, moving it around. Definitely having Thompson helped a lot, as did Averillo, who also scored, and Wateni Zelezniak, the human sledgehammer, and he also got the third try for the Dogs. So having those guys back in the mix all helped. Whereas for the Storm, clearly 28.5-point favourites. While the Bulldogs did mount a little bit of a comeback, the Storm in the end, too good, won by 34. Something else interesting for that game to me was Pappenhausen. Did you guys see the sports bet markets? You could bet Pappenhausen to outscore the Bulldogs on his own. And Pappy did get a try in the second half and ended up with a tally of 20 points, I believe. So outscored the Bulldogs by 2 points. So it actually was a bit of a nervous one. The Storm needed to score a try with about 90 seconds to go under the post for Pappenhausen to outscore the Bulldogs. So in that sense, it was a little bit of a sweat if you did take the $1.40 on that one. Business as usual for the Storm. Harry Grant returned, got to play like 40 minutes because the cheese was a little bit under the weather. So that's good signs for the Storm to get Harry Grant back in the mix. And now Bellamy's got a decision to make about whether Harry Grant would be the starting 9 moving forward, or whether they'll start with the cheese and then bring Grant in for the last hour and move cheese to play like a lock forward role. They're going along just fine, the Storm, after back-to-back losses in round 2 and 3. It's easy to get right when you play a couple of the softest teams in the comp, and they've got that with a home game to Brisbane and then a road trip to the Bulldogs. This was another crazy game. Roosters 26 beat the Sharks 18. Now, one thing I like to try and do when I look back at the matches is kind of figure out, as a bettor, you can't be stubborn and you can't stick to your guns too much and say, no, I was right, just, I got unlucky. You've got to identify when you were right, but you've also got to identify when you were wrong. And from a neutral point of view, where I didn't have a best bet on this Rooster Sharks game, I still want to look at it and say, yeah, if that game was played again, who would I have wanted to be on? And I think anyone who was on the Sharks plus 7.5 was incredibly hard done by, because I think the Sharks were the right side in this game. And if you didn't catch it, it was far closer than the final score suggested. Obviously, Roosters end up victorious by 8 points, but it was 18-4 to Cronulla with about 20 to go. This was crazy. So again, I know a lot of you guys like to have your multis with a lot of the favourites in there. A lot of people must have been sweating, or they're same gamers with Roosters to win. This looked like the Sharks had them. They basically had them beat. But what I really took out of this game was the composure of the Roosters. Like, when you consider they've got virtually a brand new 6, Sam Walker in his second ever game at 7, Lussick was in there at 9, and I think he even got hurt as well. Like, I think Lussick got a broken arm in the end. But I think it just goes to show the senior players that those guys have around them, and the coaching staff this team keeps their cool, and they didn't panic when they were down 14 points. And we saw, if you fast forward to the Eels today, like, they got very flustered when they had to chase points. But this Roosters side, they just kept on coming, kept on knocking on the door. And in the end, I'm sure you've heard the headline of the match, of course, was Sam Walker, 3 try assists, including ridiculous, audacious, like triple cutout, massive spiral ball to Tupou that gets him back in the game. And he scores the go-ahead try himself as well. So, the kid looks like a natural. I see a few people commenting about him. The story came out in the last week or two that the Broncos had first dibs on him. Basically, they knew of him. I think he was in the Ipswich system, and they didn't really instill a lot of faith in him or make him feel like he was a priority. And when he got a meeting with the Roosters, he was more than happy to go down to Sydney. So, I thought that the Sharks were trying to rough him up. I specifically saw Chad Townsend put a couple of hits on him right after he kicked the ball. And in the end, it's Sam Walker who shook off Chad Townsend for the try. That basically won the Roosters the match. So he had the last laugh. That was crazy. Brett Morris, I think he got a double in the game. But yeah, I mean, after last week where the Roosters beat New Zealand by 20 and Walker had 1 try assist, and everyone was saying, oh, he looked so cool, he looked like such a natural. It's easy to look good in a game where you win by 20 and you're always, in control. This was a different story. This was one of those games where, even to me, I said, yeah, the hype is real. And again, it's brutal and heartbreaking that Luke Keary, will take no part in this season. But I did say at the time, the one positive is we get to have a look at this kid. And there is something special about watching real raw talent. And people are saying, like, the kid's like just about is about the same size as me, but he's out there like, tackling 120 kilo blokes. And yeah, he's never going to be a strength in defense. But clearly, if he can bring that kind of class to their attack, and he's so confident, then he makes up for it. And it's still going to mean the Roosters are going to be hard to beat, and they're a very exciting team to watch. Now, one other point I took away from this game, on top of the Sharks blowing a 14-point lead, Wade Graham was injured early in the game as well. It was a HIA for, I think, the second time in the last 3 weeks. And clearly that hurt the Sharks a lot. Wade Graham is the Sharks' best player, most important player, captain. And he was out for, I think, like the final hour of the game. So that was one of the compounding, effects that eventually wore the Sharkies down. But, man, they'll be hurting because the Sharks have already, 5 rounds in, have had some tough losses already. But they didn't do anything that made me think any less of them. Sharks are a tough side. And as I said, if you play this game again, I'd be taking the Sharks if I got 7.5. And I feel sorry for anyone who was on them. I was just thinking to myself, somewhere out there is somebody who backed Tigers plus 10.5 against Eels a week ago on Easter Monday and then had Sharks against Roosters. It's a brutal sport sometimes, and it's a brutal sport to punt on sometimes as well. Let's move to Sunday, guys. Nearly there. 2 games to go. Let's wrap it up. Appreciate your comments coming through. Josh asks, what's my tips for round 6? You'll get my tips on the Wednesday preview pod, of course. Well, this Sunday game, this Sunday slate, this back-to-back was pretty insane, wasn't it, fellas? Like, you had Taumalolo and Josh Maguire were ruled out for the Cowboys. They're away to the Tigers. They've been absolutely horrendous. You could argue Cowboys were probably the worst team in the first month, I guess, between them and the Bulldogs. And they came into this game a 14.5-point underdog to the Tigers. they ended up getting out, I think, 18-0 lead. And by halftime, it was 28-6 to the Cowboys. And just a little thing, I don't get to watch every game live. Sometimes just got to try and stay on top of so much sport. Sometimes I'm recording or playing catch-up. But anytime I am watching the games live, I do jump in the Tripod group in the game thread and interact. And a little nugget in there, I did say at halftime, I really think Tigers are going to come back in this one. I think they're going to get the spray of doom from Madge. And I know a few of the boys did jump on the Tigers second half line, -5.5. I had a couple people message me to say thanks. So that's like a little bonus thing that I don't go out of my way to share unless something just happens to pop out to me. So if I ever have any live thoughts, occasionally there are things that might help you profit if you're into live betting. I don't even live bet myself, but it just seemed to me like, obviously RIP Tommy Raudonikis, and there was a lot of emotion in this game, and maybe it got the better of the Tigers, but it was a big crowd at Leichhardt. They had to come back and fight back. But hey, enough about the Tigers. Tough loss for them because they did make a comeback and it was too little too late. But how about the Cowboys? They just blitzed them early. The Cowboys came out and played with no fear. They were willing to take the Tigers on. They were, kicking early and attacking kicks and just throwing the footy around and really just kind of shell-shocked the Tigers. But you always felt like this Cowboys team doesn't have enough class to strangle anybody out. So once the Tigers got their shit together, they did make a comeback. And there was a moment with 15 minutes to go when Nufaluma scored to cut the deficit to 4 points. And just before they took the conversion, they did the automatic bunker review or the bunker referral and cancelled it overturned it for a obstruction. And it was a legit obstruction, so not saying that that was not correct call. But the very next set, the Cowboys scored. So it went from being what would have been a 4 or 2 point deficit was back out to like 16. So, and even in saying that, the Tigers still had a chance late before Luke Brooks dropped the kickoff with 50 seconds to go, and they were down less than a converted try. So they did make a spirited comeback, but that's still not good enough for the Tigers. You're at home. You're against the Cowboys team. Michael Morgan had to retire this week medically, which is really sad as well. As I said, Lolo was held out an extra week, and the Tigers still couldn't get it done here. So awful for them, and big pressure release for Todd Payton's men. I think they really needed that win. And again, that's what you get sometimes betting on desperate teams or teams that are downtrodden. Sometimes they're the most desperate of anyone to get a win because they haven't tasted victory yet. So that was the biggest upset of the season as far as I can remember. I think the 3 biggest upsets this year, we've had 3 times a double-digit underdog has won. The first was when the Warriors upset Canberra as about a 10.5-point underdog. And then I think the 2 games today was double-digit underdogs getting the upset because as we moved to the final game of the round, it was Dragons 26 defeating the Eels 12. And by kickoff, the Dragons were an 11.5-point underdog. And I had dismissed somewhat the form of the Dragons over the last 3 weeks. As you guys know, I dismissed it. I said everyone needs to hold their horses. Yes, someone's mentioning the Tigers upset over the Knights, although I believe that line was a little bit closer to kind of around the 8 mark as well. But that was another one of the bigger upsets of the season so far. But yeah, I got this game wrong, and I don't mind. I know people might not want to hear this, but I don't mind when I lose a best bet where I just got a game completely wrong. I don't go and kick rocks. Like, that's going to happen. The fact is, out of all the best bets I share this season, there's going to be a few that aren't necessarily great, and they are 50-50s, and you see games like Roosters Sharks or Panthers Storm springs to mind where it's going to be in the balance with 5 minutes to go, and we really, the close ones, you hope to win half the time. You're going to win half the time, lose half the time. Where you make money over a season is by getting those games where you definitely got right and having them more often than the games you definitely got wrong. And clearly, my best bet on Parramatta -9.5, even though we beat the closing line, that's wrong. Parramatta, disappointing today, not good enough. Ryan Madison didn't end up playing, so that doesn't help. But again, that wouldn't have changed the result today. This was about the Dragons really showing that they have turned things around, and they just look so aggressive and so intense in defense. And I mentioned this in the comments that that is a hallmark of Anthony Griffin. He likes his teams to really hit hard and really hit aggressively. And I remember him dropping Elijah Taylor years ago from the Panthers, and Elijah Taylor was making 40 tackles a game and barely any misses, and Cook dropped him because he doesn't hit hard enough in defense. He said, I don't care about line speed. I don't care about not missing tackles. You don't hit aggressively enough, you're not going to make my team. And that's always kind of stuck with me, that's the type of footy team he wants to coach, and that suits the personnel the Dragons have. They're a bunch of tough hombres, and they out-toughed Parramatta. And look, it's a game of missed opportunities, and someone's right there, sport reactions, that they're missing Ben Hunt as well, which people didn't really think made a big difference because they went on to win last week without him anyway. But it's still your captain, and that's on the back of losing McInnes. So this is all really impressive. Like, they really impressed me. And I'll go back to round 3 where they beat Manly by about 18 points. If you watch that game, Manly had so much ball on their line, and the Dragons just kept turning him away. And I think a lot of people dismissed it like, oh, well, it's no big deal. It wasn't impressive. It was just how bad Manly is. But even I was impressed by the Dragons that day. I think clearly now it's not a debate that there's really has been a culture change, and there's a lot of belief, and they're really confident. And now I'm going to have to think really long and hard before I want to get out in front of this Dragons side, because they're playing really strong spirited footy, and it's all in. And I think a lot of people expected a long season. Even I said that they were my choice for the wooden spoon. So making us all look very wrong, and you got to hand it to them. Now, specifically in this game, there was a bit of chat about the penalty try. To me, that was the try that put the Dragons up 12-0 from 6-0. To me, I don't think it was a penalty try to Dufty, but if it wasn't a penalty try, it's going to be a penalty and a sin bin. And I feel like having a man in the bin for 10 and the other team getting a penalty, that's probably worth about $6 points anyway. So to me, that doesn't really influence the match. Couple calls maybe didn't go Parramatta's way, but really no excuse for them. I thought they got flustered by the fact that the Dragons pretty much just punched them in the mouth, and they never kind of got themselves back in the game. The Dragons did have a man sent to the bin. Parramatta did pull the game back within 12 points and were knocking on the door. Had they scored again, I'm really more saying maybe Parramatta could have come on and won. But the fact that they didn't just shows how resilient this Dragons side is, and was able to defend that lead even when they were down to 12 men. And my final point, which I think I touched on at the start, we get a try with a few minutes to go with Para. That was after a try was disallowed, which again I thought was a really tough call. We do get a try that gets us to 12 points, which is exactly the same number of points the Warriors scored. And then the Para made a line break right at the end, had the Dragons at 6s and 7s, had about a 3-on-2, and I think Nathan Brown throws an intercept to a retreating Lomax. We could have got in the back door and won the mixed matchup, and that would have been cashing a $2.25 mixed matchup, but it wasn't to be. Overall, that's a fair reflection of punting on footy. Some is going to go our way, and other times it isn't. Sometimes we make it look like it's easy, but it definitely is never easy, and it's really hard to predict what's going to happen in these games. And I do my best, but sometimes I can be way off the mark. Sometimes there's just games that sneak up on you that very few people saw coming. So look forward to diving into the action for round 6 and previewing that on Wednesday night, of course. Now we've got no daylight savings to contend with. 5:45 on YouTube. That will be out on Australian Eastern Coast Standard Time. I'm sorry, I had technical difficulties. It was delayed about half an hour last week, but I'll endeavour to get that pod up on Wednesday night. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for interacting, guys. As always, remember, it's very hard to win money punting, and it's very easy to lose. So as always, gamble responsibly. Lego.